My name is Sierra Reynolds, and I'm a 36-year-old marketing executive living in New York City. Right now, I'm standing in the chaos of JFK Airport, heart-pounding suitcase, half-zipped about to board a flight to Norfolk, Virginia, for what was supposed to be a routine inheritance hearing about my grandfather's estate. Then my phone buzzes with a message from Dan Hayes, my family's longtime assistant and lawyer. "Call me immediately." I step away from the gate, hands shaking, and dial him back. Dan picks up before the first ring ends. His voice is low, urgent, almost a whisper. "Sierra, where are you? Are you alone?" "I'm at the airport." "What's wrong?" He doesn't waste time. "Your parents and Tyler have filed for temporary emergency guardianship over you. They're claiming your unstable stress from work, erratic decisions, inability to manage your share of your grandfather's trust." The hearing was quietly moved up by 24 hours. "You never received the official notice. If you don't show up, they could get temporary control approved by default." The words hit like a slap. My own parents. My brother. Trying to lock me out of the inheritance my grandfather left specifically for me and Tyler, equally according to the old trust and his handwritten letter. I feel the blood drain from my face. They're doing this to me. My own family. Dan's voice hardens. "It looks like manipulation to keep you away. They want your portion of the estate house in Richmond, the portfolio. If you miss this hearing, they win the first round without a fight." I look at the boarding line disappearing. The gate agent calls my name one last time. I hang up, grab my bag, and run toward the plane. Whatever they're planning, I'm not letting them take what Grandpa wanted me to have. I'm boarding now. But what they don't know is that I'm already one step ahead. If you've ever had someone close to you pull a legal move behind your back to take what's yours, drop a comment below and tell me where you're listening from right now. Have you ever had to fight your own family for what rightfully belongs to you? Share your story. I read every single one. Hit like if you want to see how this ends, and subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. P2. The plane leveled off at cruising altitude and the cabin lights dimmed. I sat alone in my window seat, staring at the dark sky outside, trying to piece together how my own family could turn against me so completely. Grandpa had been gone for 2 years, but the memory of his final days still felt fresh. He'd called me to his bedside in Richmond, voice weak but clear, and made me promise to look after the trust he'd set up. "Equal shares for you and Tyler," he'd said, pressing a handwritten letter into my hand. "No favoritism. You're both my grandchildren. That's final." I'd kept that letter in my safe deposit box ever since. In it, he wrote the same thing in his careful looping script. The house on Monument Avenue and the investment portfolio are to be divided equally between Sierra and Tyler. I trust my son Robert and daughter-in-law Margaret to honor this. No one gets more because they need it more. He'd underlined that last sentence twice. Back then, Mom and Dad had nodded solemnly at the reading of the trust. "We'll make sure Grandpa's wishes are respected," Dad said. Mom hugged me and whispered, "You've always been responsible, honey. We're proud of you." That was before Tyler started losing money on bad real estate deals, before he moved back into the old house temporarily, before the calls from Mom began to sound different. "Tyler's struggling, Sierra," she'd say whenever I phoned home. "He's trying so hard. Maybe you could help him out a little more." Dad would chime in, "You're doing well up there in New York. We just want to make sure everyone's taken care of." At first I thought it was concern. Now I saw it for what it was, pressure. My phone vibrated again. Dan. I answered quickly, keeping my voice low. "Sierra." "I've pulled the filing," he said. "They submitted the petition for temporary emergency guardianship yesterday afternoon. Affidavits from Robert, Margaret, and Tyler. They claim you exhibit signs of cognitive decline due to chronic work-related stress, forgetfulness, poor decision-making, inability to manage financial responsibilities." They attached a preliminary letter from Dr. Marcus Hale, a psychiatrist Tyler apparently consulted last month. I gripped the armrest. Hale. I've never even met him. Exactly. It's a one-page summary, not a full evaluation. They're using it to justify the emergency order. If granted, it would give them temporary control over your share of the trust assets until a full hearing. They're arguing you're a risk to yourself and the estate. My stomach twisted. And the hearing date change court clerk shows it was rescheduled at the request of their attorney, citing urgency due to potential asset dissipation. No notice was sent to your last known address in New York. They knew you wouldn't get it in time. I closed my eyes for a second. They planned this. They wanted me out of the picture. Dan's tone hardened. It looks that way. But temporary emergency guardianship isn't a slam dunk. Virginia courts require clear and convincing evidence of immediate harm. They're banking on you not showing up. If you appear and counter with proof of capacity, the judge will likely deny it or at least delay any order until a full competency evaluation. I opened my notes app and started typing. What do I need? First, your own medical records. Recent physical, any mental health screenings from work insurance. Second, financial statements showing you manage your accounts responsibly. Third, character witnesses, colleagues, friends who can attest you're stable. And fourth, your grandfather's original trust documents and that handwritten letter. Bring everything to Norfolk. I'll meet you at the courthouse tomorrow morning. I glanced at the seatback screen, still 3 hours to go. Dan. Why would Mom and Dad do this? They promised Grandpa. A pause. I don't know the whole story yet, but from the affidavits, they're fully on board. They signed statements saying you've become distant and unreliable, that Tyler is the one who's been helping them with daily affairs. They're framing it as protecting the family legacy. I felt a cold rage settle in my chest. They're not protecting anything. They're stealing from me. Focus on the fight, Dan said. You're not alone. I've already spoken to a local attorney here in Norfolk who specializes in probate and guardianship contests. She's ready to file a response as soon as you land. I ended the call and immediately texted Claire. On the plane. They filed emergency guardianship. Need you to pull my last 3 years of medical records, 401k statements, and credit reports. Also call my boss. Get a letter saying I've been performing at a high level. I'll explain everything when I land. Claire's reply came in seconds already on it. I love you. You've got this. I leaned back, staring at the letter from Grandpa in my mind. Equal shares. No favoritism. He'd trusted my parents to honor that. Instead, they'd chosen a different path. The plane droned on through the night sky. I wasn't just going to a hearing anymore. I was going to war. P3. The wheels touched down at Norfolk International just after noon, and I wasted no time. I rented a car at the counter, punched the Richmond address into the GPS, and merged onto I-64 westbound. The drive was about 90 minutes, plenty of time for my mind to run through every possible scenario. By the time I pulled into the circular driveway of the old house on Monument Avenue, the sun was high and the neighborhood quiet except for the cicadas. I stepped out, smoothed my blazer, and walked up the brick path. The front door opened before I could knock. Mom stood there, arms open, smile too wide. Sierra, you made it. Come in, honey. Dad appeared behind her, nodding. We were worried the flight would be delayed. Tyler lingered in the hallway, leaning against the banister with that same half-concerned look he'd worn on video calls lately. I forced a small smile and stepped inside. The living room smelled like coffee and old books, Grandpa's books. Papers were spread across the dining table, legal forms, trust summaries, bank statements. They weren't even trying to hide it. I set my bag down. The hearing was moved up. I didn't get any notice. Mom waved a hand. Oh, that must be a mix-up with the court. But you're here now, so it's fine. Sit down. We saved you a seat. I stayed standing. A mix-up. The clerk rescheduled at someone's request. My lawyer says it was your attorney. Tyler straightened. We didn't know, sis. Honest. Things just moved fast because, well, We're concerned about you. Dad cleared his throat. You've been under a lot of pressure in New York. We thought it best to have a conversation before tomorrow. I looked at the papers again. One sheet caught my eye, a proposed temporary delegation of authority, giving them power to manage my share of the trust assets in case of incapacity. My name was already typed at the bottom next to a signature line. Tyler stepped closer, voice soft. We're worried, Sierra. You've been distant. Grandpa's trust is complicated. Let us help manage your portion for a while. Just temporary. We can all protect what he left us. I met his eyes. Protect it? Or control it? Mom touched my arm. Don't be like that. We're family. We'll take care of everything while you focus on work. I pulled away gently. I'll think about it. Right now, I need coffee. They exchanged glances. Dad said, Of course. Margaret, why don't you make a fresh pot? Mom nodded and headed to the kitchen. Tyler followed her a moment later, leaving me alone with Dad. I waited until their footsteps faded, then leaned over the table. Underneath a stack of bank printouts was another page, the same delegation form, but this one had a signature at the bottom. It looked like mine. Almost. The capital S had a slight extra loop, the Y tailed differently. Forged. Or at least attempted. My pulse hammered. I slipped my phone out, switched to voice memo, and hit record, keeping it low against my thigh. When Mom and Tyler returned with mugs, I accepted one and sat. The conversation shifted to small talk, work, weather, but I steered it back. So the guardianship petition, I said casually. What exactly are you claiming? Tyler shrugged. Just that you're overwhelmed. Nothing permanent. We want to help, Dad added. The doctor's note says, stress can affect judgment. We have a preliminary report from Dr. Hale. I nodded slowly. I see. And if I sign this delegation tonight, that goes away? Mom smiled. Exactly. Simple solution. I pretended to consider it. I'll look it over later. They relaxed visibly. After another half-hour of surface conversation, I excused myself to freshen up. In the hallway bathroom, I stopped the recording and texted Claire, got audio. They're pushing delegation. Saw forged signature attempt. Stay ready. Back in the living room, I told them I needed to run an errand and would be back for dinner. They didn't argue. I drove to a nearby electronics store, bought 2 small wireless cameras with motion detection and audio discrete models designed for home security. Back at the house that evening, while everyone was distracted with dinner prep, I slipped upstairs and placed one in the living room bookshelf angled toward the dining table. The second went in the study, hidden behind Grandpa's old encyclopedia, set pointing at the desk where the papers were kept. Both connected to a secure cloud account only I could access. Virginia law allows recording in common areas without consent, if there's no expectation of privacy, especially when fraud is suspected. I tested the feeds from my phone, crystal clear. Dinner was tense but civil. Mom kept asking about New York. Dad talked about Grandpa's garden. Tyler stayed quiet, watching me. I smiled, nodded, played along. After dessert, they brought the delegation form again. Just sign, Sierra, Tyler said. It'll make everything easier. I looked at each of them, Mom's hopeful eyes, Dad's steady gaze, Tyler's barely concealed impatience. I'll review it tonight, I said. Promise. They accepted that. Later, when the house went quiet, I lay in the guest room, phone glowing in the dark. The cameras were live. Whatever they discussed after I went to bed would be captured. I wasn't just defending myself anymore. I was building the case they never saw coming. P4. Sunlight streamed through the dining room windows the next morning. I came downstairs to find Tyler already there, standing next to a tall man in a dark suit and wire-rimmed glasses. Mom poured coffee. Dad sat at the head of the table with a folder open. Tyler smiled when he saw me. Sis, this is Dr. Marcus Hale. He's here to do a quick mental health check. Just routine for the guardianship paperwork. I nodded calmly. Okay, let's do it. Dr. Hale extended his hand. His grip was firm, professional. Nice to meet you, Ms. Reynolds. This won't take long. We can sit here. We moved to the living room. He opened a leather notebook and began with standard questions: current date, location, day of the week. I answered correctly, then deliberately hesitated on the month, said September instead of October. His pen paused. Interesting, he murmured. Any recent forgetfulness like that? I shrugged. Sometimes. Work's been intense. He nodded, satisfied, and moved on. Tell me about your job. What do you do day to day? I leaned forward slightly. I'm a senior marketing strategist. Right now, I'm leading a campaign for a national retail chain. We're dealing with a segmented audience. Gen Z prefers short-form video on TikTok, but our core, 35 to 54 demographic still responds best to email sequences tied to loyalty points. Last quarter, we, A/B, tested 2 subject lines. 1, emotional; 1, benefit-driven, and the emotional one outperformed by 22% in open rates, but the benefit one had higher conversion. We had to pivot mid-campaign because of a supply chain delay from the port strike in Long Beach. I coordinated with legal, creative, and media buying teams to shift budget to programmatic display without losing ROAS. Hale blinked. His pen stopped moving. He looked down at his notes, then back at me. That's quite detailed. Is it? I asked innocently. Just my job. He cleared his throat. Let's talk about stress. Do you feel overwhelmed? Any trouble concentrating? I tilted my head. Sometimes. But I've managed 6-figure campaigns under tighter deadlines. Why do you ask? He smiled thinly. Family reports some concerns. Memory lapses, irritability. I met his gaze. Family reports. Or just their opinion. Do you have independent medical evidence, doctor, or are you relying on statements from people who stand to gain if I'm declared unfit? The room went still. Tyler shifted in his chair. Mom's coffee cup clinked against the saucer. Hale recovered quickly. I'm basing my assessment on the evaluation today. But you haven't done a full evaluation? I said evenly. No cognitive screening tool, no standardized test, just questions and their affidavits. In Virginia, guardianship requires clear and convincing evidence of incapacity. A one-sided preliminary opinion isn't enough for emergency relief. He closed his notebook. I'll note your clarity. Tyler stood up. I think that's enough for now. Thanks, Doc. Hale nodded and left without another word. Tyler followed him to the door, whispering something I couldn't hear. When he came back, his face was tight. You okay, sis? Fine? I said. Just answering honestly. Mom touched my shoulder. We only want what's best. I smiled. I know. They left me alone in the living room. I pulled out my phone and dialed Dr. Rebecca Sloan's office, the geriatric psychiatrist Dan had recommended. Her receptionist answered immediately. I need an urgent evaluation, I said. Today, if possible. It's for a guardianship hearing tomorrow. They squeezed me in for 2 p.m. I drove straight to her practice in downtown Richmond, a quiet office building near VCU Medical Center. Dr. Sloan was in her late 50s, sharp-eyed, no nonsense. She greeted me with a firm handshake. Tell me what's happening, she said. I laid it out: the petition, the affidavits, Dr. Hale's visit, the forged signature. I'd seen the family pressure. She listened without interrupting, then began the assessment. She started with the Montreal Cognitive Assessment MoCA. I scored 30 out of 30. Perfect. She followed with clock drawing, trail making, verbal fluency tests. I completed each one flawlessly. When she asked about executive function, I walked her through the same marketing case I'd used on Hale, but this time with full numbers. ROI 4.81, click-through rate 3.2%, conversion lift 18%. She nodded, impressed. Ms. Reynolds, she said when we finished, your cognitive function is well above average for your age. No signs of impairment. I'll have a notarized report ready by end of day. I exhaled for what felt like the first time in hours. Thank you. She handed me her card. If they push this to a full hearing, I'll testify. This isn't about your mental health. It's about control. I left her office with the preliminary notes in my bag and drove back to the house. The cameras were still running. I checked the feed from my phone, nothing yet. But I knew they would talk tonight. I wasn't going to let them rewrite Grandpa's wishes. Not without a fight they couldn't win. P5. Later that afternoon, the house felt heavier than usual. Mom and Dad had gone out to run errands and Tyler disappeared upstairs to take a call. I stayed behind in the living room, claiming I needed to answer some work emails. The moment the front door closed, I opened my laptop on the coffee table and logged into the family shared drive, the one Grandpa had set up years ago for trust-related documents. I still had admin access from when he asked me to help organize the files after his diagnosis. I started with the email archive. Tyler had never been careful about logging out of shared accounts. I searched his name in the inbox and found a chain from 3 months earlier. Subject line urgent, loan status. The message from his lender was blunt final notice on a $420,000 commercial real estate loan. The Richmond property he'd flipped last year, supposed to be a quick profit, had tanked after the market cooled. The bank was initiating foreclosure proceedings. Attached was a scanned copy of the notice stamped with red ink: payment due in full within 30 days, or property will be sold at public auction. I scrolled further. Another email, this one from Tyler to Dad and Mom, time-stamped 2 weeks ago. I'm in trouble. If I don't get the funds from Grandpa's trust soon, it's over. Sierra's share is the only liquid piece left. We need to move fast. The guardianship is our best shot. Please sign the affidavits I sent. Dad's reply was short. We've signed. Do what you need to do. Mom added a heart emoji. My hands trembled on the keyboard. I copied the entire thread, emails, attachments, timestamps, and uploaded it to an encrypted cloud folder Claire and I shared. Then I switched to the bank portal. Grandpa had given me view-only access to the trust account when he was still alive. The balance was steady, just over $3 million in diversified holdings. But there was a pending transfer request, $850,000 to an account in Tyler's name labeled Family Distribution Advance. The request had been initiated by Dad 2 days ago, pending approval from the trustee bank. No mention of my consent. I took screenshots of everything: the transfer form, the account activity log showing no prior distributions to me, the IP address logged in from the Richmond house. My breathing was shallow now. This wasn't just pressure, it was coordinated theft. I opened my phone's voice memo app again and hit record, narrating quietly what I'd found. Date today. Discovered foreclosure notice on Tyler's property, $420,000 owed. Email chain confirms Mom and Dad signed guardianship affidavits to support his claim. Pending transfer request for $850,000 from trust to Tyler's account, no notice to me. This violates the equal share provision in Grandpa's trust. I stopped the recording and saved it to the same cloud folder. Then I texted Claire, found hard evidence. Foreclosure docs, emails from Tyler to parents, unauthorized transfer request. Sending links now. Call the Norfolk attorney. Tell her we have proof of intent to defraud the trust. Her reply came instantly. Got it. Sending to Dan too. Stay safe. I love you. I closed the laptop and leaned back against the couch. The anger was there, sharp and hot, but beneath it was something colder: disappointment so deep it felt like a physical weight. Mom and Dad hadn't been manipulated. They had chosen this. They believed Tyler deserved more because he was the one who stayed close, the one who needed help. I was the daughter who left for New York, the one who built her own life. In their eyes, that made me less entitled. I stood up and walked to the window. The cameras I'd placed yesterday were still active. I checked the feed quickly. No movement yet. But I knew they would talk again tonight, especially after Dr. Hale's visit didn't go as planned. I slipped my phone into my pocket and headed to the kitchen for water. The house was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator. I poured a glass and stood there staring at the family photos on the fridge. Grandpa smiling with both of us as kids. Mom and Dad at my college graduation, Tyler's high school prom. All of it felt like a lie now. When Tyler came downstairs a few minutes later, he found me sitting at the table again. Laptop closed. "Everything okay?" he asked, casual. "Fine," I said. "Just catching up on work." He nodded, but his eyes flicked to the closed computer. "You know we're only trying to help." I met his gaze. "I know exactly what you're trying to do." He froze for half a second, then laughed it off. "You're paranoid, sis. Get some rest." He walked away. I waited until his footsteps faded upstairs, then opened the laptop one more time. I downloaded the trust's original PDF from Grandpa's files and cross-checked it against the pending transfer request. The original document explicitly required unanimous beneficiary consent for any advance over $50,000. I had never been asked. I saved the comparison side by side in the cloud folder and added a note: violation of trust terms. No consent obtained. The pieces were falling into place. Tomorrow at the hearing, I wouldn't just defend my mental health. I would expose what they were really after. P6. The house went quiet after midnight. I waited in the guest room until the last light under the hallway door disappeared. Then I slipped out, barefoot, phone in one hand, small flashlight in the other. The floorboards creaked under my weight, but no one stirred. I moved down the hall to Grandpa's old study, the room no one used anymore except to store boxes and dust. The door was ajar. I pushed it open slowly and stepped inside. Moonlight filtered through the blinds, casting long shadows across the desk. I clicked on the flashlight and aimed it low. The bottom drawer of the filing cabinet had always been locked. Grandpa kept important papers there. I knelt, pulled a paperclip from my pocket, and worked the simple lock until it popped. Inside was a manila folder labeled Trust, Amendment Draft. My stomach tightened. I opened it. The top page was a proposed amendment to Grandpa's trust dated 3 weeks ago. It changed the distribution. Tyler would receive 80% of the liquid assets and full control of the Richmond house. I would get 20% paid out over 10 years with restrictions. At the bottom was a signature line. The name Sierra Reynolds was written there in what looked like my handwriting, but the capital S had an extra curl at the top. The lowercase r was looped differently. It wasn't mine. I laid the page next to a copy of my real signature from an old trust distribution form Grandpa had me sign years ago. The differences were obvious under the flashlight stroke pressure slant, even the way the pen lifted between letters. Someone had practiced. Or traced. My breath caught. I photographed both pages side by side, then flipped through the rest of the folder. There was a cover letter from Tyler's attorney to the trustee bank requesting immediate approval of the amendment due to beneficiary incapacity concerns. Attached was a copy of the guardianship petition and Dr. Hale's preliminary letter. Everything tied together. I heard footsteps in the hallway, soft, hesitant. I killed the flashlight and slid the folder back into the drawer, leaving it unlocked. The door opened. Mom stood there in her robe, hair down, looking surprised. "Sierra, what are you doing in here so late?" I straightened up, forcing calm. "Couldn't sleep. Came looking for some old photos of Grandpa. Wanted to see his handwriting again." She stepped inside, eyes scanning the room. "It's late. You should rest. Tomorrow's a big day." "I know," I said. "I'll be right out." She lingered a moment, then nodded and left. I waited until her door clicked shut, then opened the drawer again, pulled out the entire folder and photographed every page, 20 in total. I returned it exactly as I found it and slipped back to my room. Once the door was closed, I connected my phone to the secure cloud and uploaded everything: the forged amendment comparison signatures, attorney cover letter, guardianship petition copy, Hale's letter. I added the audio from the delegation push earlier, the screenshots from the bank portal showing the unauthorized transfer request, and Dr. Sloan's full notarized report stating my cognitive function was intact and well above average. I emailed the entire package to my Norfolk attorney with the subject line "Evidence of Fraud and Undue Influence. Urgent for hearing." CC'd Dan and Claire. Then I sat on the edge of the bed staring at the screen. The betrayal wasn't just Tyler's greed. Mom and Dad had actively participated. They hadn't been tricked or pressured. They chose to forge documents, sign false affidavits, and push a guardianship claim to rewrite Grandpa's clear instructions. All because they believed Tyler deserved more. Because I was the one who left home. Because in their minds, staying close meant entitlement. I felt the anger shift into something sharper resolve. They weren't protecting the family legacy. They were dismantling it. I checked the camera feeds one last time. Motion in the hallway, Dad walking to the kitchen for water. He paused outside my door, listened, then continued. They were watching me too. I turned off the light and lay down, phone clutched in my hand. Tomorrow wasn't just about defending my mental health. It was about exposing what they had done to Grandpa's trust and to me. The clock on the nightstand glowed 1:47 a.m. I closed my eyes, but sleep didn't come. P7. The Norfolk courthouse smelled of polished wood and old paper. I arrived early, walked through security, and found the assigned courtroom on the second floor. The door was open. I stepped inside and took a seat at the respondent's table. My attorney, Ellen Carter, was already there, files neatly stacked. She gave me a quick nod. "You ready?" I exhaled. "As ready as I'll ever be." The courtroom filled slowly. Tyler entered first, wearing a dark suit that looked borrowed. Mom and Dad followed, faces composed but eyes avoiding mine. Their lawyer, a thin man in his 50s named Paul Grayson, carried a briefcase and set it down with confidence. Tyler sat next to him, glancing at me, once his expression a mix of defiance and nerves. Judge Margaret Ellison entered. Everyone stood. She was in her late 50s, sharp features, no-nonsense voice. "This is the matter of the temporary emergency guardianship petition for Sierra Reynolds. Counsel proceed." Grayson rose. "Your Honor, the petitioners, Robert and Margaret Reynolds, parents of the respondent, and Tyler Reynolds, her brother, seek temporary emergency guardianship due to clear evidence of incapacity. The respondent exhibits signs of cognitive decline from chronic occupational stress. We have affidavits from family members, a preliminary psychiatric opinion from Dr. Marcus Hale, and a proposed amendment to the family trust reflecting the respondent's inability to manage her share responsibly." He handed copies to the bench and to Ellen. "The amendment reallocates distributions to protect the estate. We request the court grant temporary control to the petitioners until a full hearing." Judge Ellison scanned the documents. Ms. Carter response. Ellen stood. "Your Honor, the petition lacks merit. We have substantial evidence of undue influence, forgery, and financial motivation behind this filing. We ask the court to deny the emergency order and consider sanctions." She began with the video clips from the hidden cameras. The screen at the front of the courtroom lit up. First clip: Mom and Tyler at the dining table. Mom saying Sierra's too stressed to handle Grandpa's trust properly. "Tyler's right here, he can manage it." Tyler nodding. "She won't even notice if we adjust the shares a little." Second clip. Tyler sliding the delegation form across the table. Voice low. "Just sign, sis. It's temporary." Third clip. Dad in the kitchen with Mom whispering, "If the guardianship goes through, Tyler gets what he needs. Sierra doesn't need the full amount." The judge's face remained neutral, but her pen moved steadily. Ellen continued. Next, the medical counter evidence. She submitted Dr. Rebecca Sloan's notarized report. Full geriatric psychiatric evaluation conducted yesterday. MOCA score 30/30. No impairment. The respondent is fully competent. Grayson objected. "Your Honor, this is a single evaluation overruled," the judge said. "It's independent and recent. Continue." Ellen moved to the financial evidence. "We have foreclosure notices on Tyler Reynolds's property, $420,000 in default. Creditor emails demanding payment. Text messages from Tyler to the petitioners. If I don't get Sierra's share, I'm bankrupt. She projected the screenshots. The courtroom was silent except for the soft hum of the projector. And finally, Ellen said the forged amendment. She placed side-by-side images the proposed trust change with my alleged signature and my authentic signature from prior documents. Expert analysis pending, but visual comparison shows discrepancies in stroke pressure and letter formation. This document was prepared without the respondent's knowledge or consent in violation of the trust's unanimous beneficiary provision under Virginia Code, Section 64.2-779.25. The judge leaned forward, studying the images. Mr. Grayson, your clients wish to respond? Grayson hesitated. Your Honor, the petitioners acted in good faith. The judge cut him off. I'll hear from them directly. Mom stood first, voice trembling. We just wanted to protect the family. Tyler needs help. Sierra's been away so long. Dad followed. We thought this was best for everyone. Tyler stayed seated, pale, staring at the table. Judge Ellison looked at me. Ms. Reynolds? I stood. My grandfather's trust was clear, equal shares. No favoritism. I have never consented to any amendment. I have never been evaluated by Dr. Hale beyond a brief conversation. What they're doing isn't protection, it's taking what isn't theirs. The judge turned back to Grayson. The court finds insufficient evidence of immediate harm or incapacity to justify emergency guardianship. The petition is denied. The proposed amendment is void due to apparent lack of consent and possible forgery. She paused. Further, the court refers this matter to the Virginia Attorney General's Office for investigation into potential financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult and forgery of trust documents. Counsel for the petitioners, you will provide all materials to the DA within 7 days. Grayson's shoulders dropped. Tyler's face drained of color. Mom covered her mouth. Dad stared straight ahead. Judge Ellison addressed me. Ms. Reynolds, you are free to pursue any civil remedies. This court is adjourned. The gavel fell. I remained standing as they filed out. Tyler looked back once, eyes wide, mouth open, but said nothing. Mom reached toward me, then stopped. Dad kept his head down. Ellen touched my arm. You did it. I nodded, but the victory felt hollow. They hadn't just lost a legal round. They had lost me. Outside the courthouse, the Virginia air was thick with summer heat. I walked to my car alone, keys in hand, the weight of the morning settling in. It wasn't over, but the first battle was won. P8. 3 weeks after the hearing, the fallout began to settle like dust after a storm. Tyler filed for Chapter 7 bankruptcy in Richmond Federal Court. The foreclosure notice on his property had become official. The bank took possession of the house he'd tried to flip. Creditors lined up. His name appeared in public records as insolvent. I didn't need Dan to tell me. The filings were searchable online. I checked once, then never again. My parents tried to reach out. The first call came 2 days after the judge's ruling. Mom's number flashed on my screen. I let it ring. She left a voicemail. Sierra, honey, we need to talk. We didn't mean for things to go this far. Please call us back. I deleted it without listening to the end. Dad texted the next day. We're sorry. We want to see you. Family is everything. I blocked both numbers. Tyler sent one message from a new number. Sis, I messed up. I need help. I blocked that too. No reply. No second chances. They were still alive, still breathing the same air in Richmond, but as far as I was concerned, they were gone. The line I drew was permanent. I returned to New York the day after the hearing. Claire met me at JFK with coffee and a quiet hug. We drove home in silence most of the way. When we got to the apartment, she poured wine and listened while I told her everything: the forged amendment, the camera footage, the judge's referral to the DA. She didn't interrupt. When I finished, she simply said, "You did what you had to do." The trust remained intact. Grandpa's original terms held equal shares between me and Tyler. With the amendment voided and the emergency guardianship denied, the trustee bank resumed normal distributions. My portion stayed under my control. I transferred the funds to a separate account, updated beneficiaries, and set up automatic quarterly payments to a charity I'd chosen, a nonprofit in Virginia that supported victims of financial exploitation among older adults. It felt like a small way to honor Grandpa's belief in fairness. I wrote a letter to myself that night. Not for anyone else, just for me. I sat at the kitchen table with a pen and paper, the city lights flickering outside the window. "Dear Sierra," I began. "You survived this. Your own family tried to take what Grandpa left you and they failed. Not because you were louder or luckier, but because you chose evidence over emotion, boundaries over forgiveness. Remember, love doesn't mean letting someone hurt you repeatedly. It means protecting yourself when they show who they are. Blood doesn't entitle anyone to your peace, your money, or your future. Grandpa trusted you to stand up for what's right. You did. Never apologize for that. Never soften the line again." I folded the letter, sealed it in an envelope, and placed it in the back of my desk drawer. I would read it whenever doubt crept in. Claire and I rebuilt our routine. Work continued, campaigns, deadlines, late nights, but the weight was gone. I stopped checking Richmond news. I stopped wondering if they were okay. They had chosen their path. I chose mine. The DA's office opened an investigation. Dan kept me updated, subpoenas, issued documents, requested interviews scheduled. Whether charges would stick, forgery, financial exploitation, I didn't know. I didn't need to know. Justice wasn't my job anymore. What mattered was the silence I had earned. No more calls, no more guilt trips, no more manipulation dressed as concern. I was free. And freedom, I learned, sometimes tastes like the absence of voices you once loved. If you've ever had to walk away from family to protect yourself, you understand. It's not betrayal. It's survival. It's choosing your future over their version of your past. Thank you for listening to my story. If it resonated, if it reminded you of your own boundaries or battles, leave a comment below. Tell me what you learned from your own hard choices. Where are you listening from right now? And if this helped you feel less alone, hit like and subscribe. I'll keep sharing stories like this. Because sometimes the truth hurts. But staying silent hurts more.